Baruch Hashem, we're continuing with our study of the Shema. And what I really want to focus on is one of the mitzvahs of the Shema, and actually two of the mitzvahs of the Shema. And in that context, I want to share with you and go read together with you and study together one of the most powerful books I've read about the Jewish faith on the topics of Judaism by one of my favorite authors, whose name is Aryeh Kaplan, Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan. Actually, I saw there's also a litigator in Florida. His name is Aryeh Kaplan, but that's not the same Aryeh Kaplan. Obviously, this is Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan, the great scholar, died tragically in a car crash. He left behind many children, but he was just an unbelievable scholar, and I love everything he writes. So he has an article about tefillin, which I wanted to study with you. So first is the mitzvah of Shema says you have to love Hashem, your God. Love Hashem, your God, with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. With all your soul, with all your might. This is in the Shema, in this week's portion. And then it says, you shall bind this on your hand, and put it as totafot between your eyes. And Rashi says one is the tefillin of the hand and the tefillin of the eyes. And then you have to write it as the mezuzah for your house and for your gates. So I've written the tefillin a few times. Baruch Hashem, I had the honor to be able to do that. And I've written mezuzot. And I want to do a deeper dive into the mitzvah of tefillin. It's a mysterious mitzvah. I wanted to see how far we can go with Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan, who wrote this book, this small book called Tefillin. And I love the book, so I'll share some of the teachings. First of all, he talks about the Shema, which is the paragraph that we just read from the Torah, and he points out, a lot of it was what we discussed on Monday, but he says it's the most important part of our prayer service. Now that's debatable. Some would say that the Amid is the most debatable, but the Shema, this is what he writes. It's recited by every believing Jew twice a day, once in the morning, once at night. We actually recite it maybe 4 times a day, maybe twice in the morning and twice a night, but fine. And then he writes, it's the first thing a Jew learns as a child and his last words before he dies. The Shema is the first thing we learn and the last thing we say. The first thing we learn and the last thing we say. And with the possible exception of the 10 Commandments, we can say, he says, with the possible exception of the 10 Commandments, just possibly, we can say it's the single most important passage in the entire Torah. So the Shema is the single most important passage. And then he writes, the Shema contains 5 essential points. 1, belief in God and his unity, because it says, Shema Yisrael, listen, Israel, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, God is one. Hashem is our God, Hashem is one. That's belief in God and his unity. We discussed that on Monday. Number 2 is love of God. V'ahavta es Hashem Elokecha, love of God. Number 3, the obligation to repeat this lesson. When we study, we have to study it, fine. And now we come to number 4 is the commandment of tefillin. Shall be a sign on your hand and a reminder between your eyes, so that Hashem's Torah be on your lips. That's from Exodus 13:9. The commandment of tefillin and the commandment of mezuzah. The commandment of tefillin is repeated 3 other times in the Torah. It's repeated in Exodus 13:9, Exodus 19:16, and Deuteronomy chapter 11, verse 18. So this is the passages. These are the passages of tefillin which appear 4 times in the Torah. So a commandment repeated 4 times in the Torah is of extraordinary importance. And on top of that, the fact that it's repeated 4 times and it's included in the Shema, which is the most important paragraph of the Torah, this tells us that the commandment of tefillin is extraordinarily important and significant. And he says, so that's the introduction. So So he writes, and this is for now debatable, but we'll just take some of his comments as and accept them. You know, we can go into them more another time. But he says the greatest possible love is love between God and man. God tells us in Jeremiah, God tells us, I've loved you with an infinite love, world of love. So to truly believe in God is to share the love. To the best of our understanding, this is what Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan writes, God's act of creation was an act of love. It was a love so immense that we can't even fathom it. And it says in Psalms, his love is infinite. This bond of love exists always, even when we do not deserve it, even when we don't deserve the love. Good to see you again, Aya. I missed you. Good to see you. Even when we don't deserve it, even when we go astray, God is like the father who loves his children, even when they don't deserve it. Even when they don't deserve it. So, also, I see Aviva and Mordechai joined us, I think, from Iceland. Special honor.
Yes, good to see you.
I hope it's a great honor. We're an international yeshiva now, Baruch Hashem. So then he writes, tefillin, and it's a practice for men to wear tefillin. Tefillin are the sign of this love, of the bond of love between God and man. That's what it is. Tefillin are a sign of this bond of love. So faith and love are very tenuous, says Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan. We could speak about them and think about them, but unless we do something tangible, we could forget the love and forget the faith. And so therefore, tefillin help us remember the love and the faith. And it's a reminder between our eyes. The tefillin has, when you open the tefillin, you see 4 parchments in them. One of them has the Shema, which is the commandment to love. You shall love your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. The tefillin, so these are 3 types of love. Love with our heart, love with our soul, love with our might. The tefillin mirrors these 3 aspects of love. How so? With all your heart. How does tefillin mirror the obligation to love God with all your heart? Anybody want to guess how? How is that? Because the tefillin, the hand tefillin, are worn on the left hand opposite the heart. And so therefore we are dedicating our heart, the seat of life, to the love of God. Number 2, with all of our soul. How so? The head tefillin are worn next to the brain, the seat of man's intellect and his soul. So we dedicate our mind to the love of God. So we're dedicating our heart, our life, our mind. And what is our might? Our might represents, where do we wear the hand tefillin? On the arm, which represents our strength. So we're dedicating our strength, our powers to the love of God. We're dedicating our life, our intellect, and all of our powers. Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan has some of these lines that we don't, I don't know where he gets it from, but it sounds so right. He writes, then, love is the basis of the entire Torah. Love is the basis of the entire Torah. The Torah tells us, they shall be for you a sign, and Hashem's Torah be on your lips. So the essence of the Torah is its mitzvot, is its commandment. In the case of tefillin, we're forging a bond that's both physical and spiritual. It's with all of our might, with all of our heart, with all of our soul, with all of our might. We're literally, when we put on the tefillin, we're literally binding God's love symbol to our bodies. So our sages teach us that the mitzvah of tefillin encompasses all other commandments. It's actually a mitzvah being done with our body. We're binding it to our body. So So anyway, I just wanted to begin with that. Okay, now I'm skipping some of the other stuff he writes. So the parchments in the tefillin speak about, in addition to our love for God, they talk about the Exodus, the departure over 3,000 years ago, which stands at the center of our faith and the center of our tradition. And the parchments in the tefillin speak of this Exodus, and so therefore they're binding us to this unique event in history. Okay. So when we bind, this is what Aryeh Kaplan writes. When we bind the tefillin to our bodies, we're reliving. I skipped the chapter here because I want to go into other parts of what he writes. He writes, when we bind the tefillin to our bodies, we're reliving the infinite bond of love that was forged at Sinai. Basically, when you put the tefillin on, it's bringing us back to that moment where God revealed himself by taking us out of Egypt and revealed himself to us at Sinai. It's an act of binding us to that moment. There were tzaddikim, he says, who achieved a mystical experience every time they put on tefillin. They could feel the words of the parchments literally burning into their hearts and soul. We may never achieve that level, but we can begin. God has given us this commandment of tefillin and spelled out how to do it. I just want to say one thing before we go on to his chapter where he explains what are the tefillin. That there's a story that Reb Levi Yitzchak, it used to be the custom that the Chevra Kadisha would sell, that the burial society would sell the tefillin of the people who died to raise money for their expenses. So one time Reb Levi Yitzchak of Berdichev came to the head of the Chevra Kadisha and says, I want to buy that pair of tefillin. And the guy saw that he wanted that tefillin, and he knew that there was something special about it. So he said, I'll sell you everything else except for that pair of tefillin. So Reb Levi Yitzchak said, no, that's the only pair I want. He goes, fine. I'll sell it to you on the condition you tell me why you want it. So Reb Levi Yitzchak said, because this is the tefillin, I'll tell you the story, that one time Reb Elimelech and Reb Zusha were traveling, our yeshiva's Elimelech, they were traveling, and they came to an inn for the night, and their practice was whenever they came to a place and they saw somebody committing a sin, they said to themselves as though they've done the sin, so that the person would recognize that there was something wrong and he would look within his own heart. So they came to the place and they noticed that there's something spiritually off. They just felt it. So they said, you know what? Probably his tefillin are of a problem. So Reb Zusha started talking to himself, and he said, Reb Zusha said, oh, I wonder if Reb Zusha's tefillin are correct. I never checked them. I wonder if they're correct. They're probably a problem with my tefillin. And then the guy who was the innkeeper said, well, I never checked my tefillin. He opened them up, and lo and behold, he had bought the boxes, but they never put the parchment inside it. So the tefillin were no good. So he started crying because he had these tefillin since his bar mitzvah. So he said to Rabbi Elimelech, what should I do? Rabbi Elimelech said, I'm going to sit down tonight and write you the tefillin, and I'm going to draw so much holiness into it from the Shemayim that it will have the power of all the times that you wore. So it'll have all the holiness for all the days that you missed tefillin, will be contained within. It'll be extra special holy pieces of paper, parchment. So that's what Rabbi Melch did that night. And he gave it to this guy the next morning. And it was such an overwhelming, powerful tefillin that this person was only able to wear it for a few days, but it became too much for his soul. And then he died. And that's the tefillin that Rabbi Levi Yitzchak wanted to buy at that moment. He said, this is the tefillin, the special. Anyway, that's just a story about tefillin that I'm sharing with you. So anyway, we go on to Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan. He's saying, the commandment of tefillin appears 4 times in the Torah. Each time the Torah is telling us that certain words and concepts are bound to our arms and to our heads. So this means that the entire paragraph containing the passage of tefillin has to be included in the tefillin. So the tefillin contain 4 pieces or 4 parchment, each one containing a paragraph with the commandment of tefillin. Actually, the tefillin of the head contain 4 parchments, but the tefillin of the hand contain only 1 parchment. What are the 4 parchment, the 4 paragraphs? I said them already, I'll say them again. Exodus 13, 1 through 10, Exodus 13, 11 through 16, the Shema, and then Vayam Shema. When we write the tefillin, we say there are 2 long and 2 short, 2 paragraphs that are very long and 2 paragraphs that are very short. The first one is long and the last one is long, Vayam Shema. When speaking of the hand tefillin, the Torah calls it a sign, an oath. An oath. The hand tefillin are called a sign. When speaking of the head tefillin, the Torah calls them totafot, which is a plural word, which is usually the totafos are called tefillin, which is a plural word. So the hand tefillin is singular. Why? And as a consequence, all the paragraphs are written on 1 piece of parchment for the hand tefillin. Whereas the head tefillin is said in the plural, so it's written on 4 separate pieces of parchment. So when you look at the hand tefillin, you'll notice that there's 1 box. And if you look closely at the head tefillin, you'll see that it's 4 separate compartments because there's ridges in between each of the compartments. Aside from this, the Torah tells us nothing at all about the tefillin. Nothing at all is written in the Torah about tefillin. Nothing in the written Torah. No description, no hint how they're supposed to be made. The Torah only tells us the contents and nothing more. So how do we know what's supposed to be in it? So the Torah was given as a written Torah and as an oral Torah. An oral Torah is the laws from Moses at Sinai, passed down orally from Moses at Sinai. And so there are 10 basic laws from Moses at Sinai that were commanded orally to the Jewish people. And those are the 10 laws that the tefillin need in order to be kosher. Number 1, the tefillin, the parchments of the tefillin come from the outermost hide of a kosher animal. It's what's called mutar b'ficha. It has to come from the parchment of an animal. The animal doesn't need to be slaughtered, but it would be kosher if it was slaughtered. Number 2, the Torah has to be written with a permanent black ink, with what's called dio, with black ink. Hold on 1 second. The Torah has to be written with black ink. The 3rd law from Moses at Sinai, the parchments have to be tied shut with the hair of a kosher animal. Number 4, they must be placed in a perfectly square leather box. Number 5, the head tefillin, the box on the outside has the Hebrew letter shin. On the right side of the box, this is the usual 3-headed shin, but on the left side, it has to have 4 heads. The left side, it's the only time in our tradition where we have a shin with 4 heads. The boxes have a wider base. This wider base, a base that's wider than the rest of the boxes, is called a titura. And the base has an opening through which the straps are passed. This is called the ma'varta. Okay, now the 8th law is the boxes are sewn closed with a thread, and this thread is made from the veins or the tendons of a kosher animal. Number 9, the tefillin have to be bound onto our body with leather straps that are dyed black, only on the outside. The inside of them does not need to be dyed black, although mine are. And number 10, the strap of the head tefillin has to be tied with a knot in the shape of a Hebrew letter Daled. Some say, there's 2 major opinions about this. One is it's a double Daled. One is it's a single Daled, but it has to be a Daled. And the hand tefillin have to be tied with a knot shaped like a yud. These are the 10 basic laws that are laws from Moses at Sinai about tefillin. The tefillin, I know some people, one time I was with a Reform rabbi, this woman, and she wore tefillin, but she's vegan, and she put on pink tefillin that were made from like organically grown cotton or something. And no, it cannot be. That's not kosher. The tefillin have to be made entirely from animal products, kosher animals. And Rabbi Ari Kaplan has a very profound reason for that, and we're going to get to that. But that you can't get out of it. The tefillin have to come from an animal. So the tefillin come from the tefillin come from 3 Hebrew letters. The tefillin contains 3 Hebrew letters. What are the 3 Hebrew letters? The Shin, the Dalet, and the Yud. These spell out the name of God. The God's name is Shakai, which is the Almighty. It's the same name that appears on the outside of the mezuzah. The Talmud says that this name is alluded to in a verse from Deuteronomy. Okay, fine. Tefillin have to be written by a certified scribe. And there are 4 callings in Judaism that require ordination. What are they? Rabbi, scribe, shoichet, and moel. And so those are the 4. Okay. Okay. Okay, what do we say about tefillin now? Let's skip that one. Skipping that chapter because that's more practical. Okay, let's go into a deeper look into the tefillin. So first of all, he cites some paragraphs that have to do with tefillin in the Talmud. So it says in the very beginning of Tractate Berachos, where do we find that God wears tefillin? Because it's written, God has sworn by his right hand and by the arm of his strength. His right hand is the Torah. I think I alluded to this passage on Monday. His right hand is the Torah. It says, from his right hand came a fiery law for them. The arm of his strength is tefillin. As it's written, God gives strength to his people. But where do we find that tefillin are Israel's strength? It says, the people of the earth shall see that God's name is called upon you, and they shall see your strength and be awed by you. This is the tefillin of the head. So what is written in the tefillin that God wears? So it contains the verse, Mika Amcha Yisrael Goyach Habaretz. Who is like you, your people, Israel, a nation on earth, whom God went to redeem for himself, for a people to make himself a name by great and tremendous things. Okay, so that's the first passage he cites from the Tractate Brachos. And another one, it says, and I think I referred to this also on Monday, it said, God told Moses, I will take away my hand and you'll see my back, but my face you shall not be seen. We learn from here that God showed Moses the knot of his head tefillin. He showed him the knot of the tefillin of his head. So God, this is one of the most mysterious teachings in the whole Talmud. It's telling us that God wears tefillin, containing the praise of the Jewish people. And when Moses asked God to show him his face, he said, I'll show you my face. And he showed him the knot of the tefillin of his head. What does this mean? What does this passage mean? Obviously, it's not meant to be understood literally because God doesn't have a body or a form. And we certainly can't imagine God wearing tefillin in a literal sense, in a physical sense. But so what is this passage about? So Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan says, okay, we have to ask the question, why did God create the world? So to the best of our understanding, God created the world as an act of love so immense that we can't even begin to fathom it. God created the entire world as a vehicle on which he could bestow his good. But God's love is so great that any good that he bestows must be the greatest good possible. Anything less would not be good enough. What's the greatest good? The greatest good is God. The greatest good that he can bestow on the world is himself. So God gave us the ability to resemble God. That is the first degree of unity. If the whole purpose is to be like God, God gave us this ability to resemble God. And the first ingredient here is free will. So just as God acts with free will, so to command. But there's another way to connect to God. What's the other way? The other way is the Torah. The Torah is the blueprint of all creation. So the Torah provides the means through which a person can partake of the godly and fulfill his purpose. But there is a third ingredient. The third ingredient brings us to tefillin. Many places the Torah speaks of God as if God has a body. We find it as God's hand, God's eye. What does it mean? What do these terms represent? They represent God's relationship with the world. It says in the Zohar, love is the right hand, power is the left, glory is the body, victory and splendor are the 2 feet, wisdom is the brain, understanding is the heart, and the crown of all is the place where the tefillin rests. So wisdom is the crown, but what's even higher than wisdom? The answer is, what's even more important than wisdom? The answer is purpose and the will and desire to create. Those are the most important things in the world to seek. The most important attributes are our purpose, why are we living, and the desire to create. So just as a crown rests on top of the head, so too purpose and will stand above wisdom. The crown of all creation is God's purpose. The crown of all is the place where tefillin rests. This means that God's tefillin are bound to his purpose. And this is what Rabbi Ari Kaplan says. He says, when Elijah says the crown of all is the place where the tefillin rests, he is saying that the concept of Israel is bound to God's purpose in creation. God's original plan required someone to receive his good. So when the Jewish people accepted the Torah, Israel became that someone. So Israel was the first ingredient of creation. So when the sages say that the world was created for the sake of Israel, it means the concept of Israel preceded all else. So the Jewish people are God's tefillin because it's the purpose for the creation of the world was Israel. And what we say when we say that God wears tefillin, we're saying that his ultimate purpose is bound up with the concept of Israel. The straps that come forth from the tefillin, go to the right and the left, represent the 2 opposing forces of God's providence, love and strength. Good comes from God's love and punishment comes from his strength. And they form this love and strength, form a knot on the head of tefillin, and they come to a point over justice. So when Moshe Rabbeinu was saying, show me your face, God just showed him the tefillin. Moshe was asking, I think the Newmans asked about this, that what does it mean, show me your face? How can you understand the face? And God showed him the back. This is what it means. Ari Kaplan is answering that question. He says, Moshe wanted to understand the purpose underlying God's justice. He said, why do the good suffer and the wicked prosper? So God showed Moses the knot of the tefillin head. Says this is where love and strength are bound together, forming the bond of justice. That's what he was answering him. So he says there's love and strength, and it makes justice, and there is justice in the world. The straps of the head tefillin then hang down the front of the body, and this shows God's purpose guiding the forces of history down to even the lowest level. Okay. So the Talmud says that the passage contained in the tefillin of God are, the people of Israel shall see you, that God's name is called upon you, and you shall be in awe of you. This refers to the tefillin of the head, because the head tefillin indicate that the Jewish people are the essential ingredient of all creation. Now, this is not obvious, but this is one reason why the tefillin are black. Why the tefillin black, says Ari Kaplan? And by the way, everything Ari Kaplan writes is based upon footnotes and footnotes of mysticism. He was above all a mystic. He wrote incredible works of mystery, of Kabbalah. So he says, one reason why the tefillin are black is to indicate that God's purpose is dark and hidden. The white parchments are only to be found when one penetrates this black barrier. We don't understand the ways of God. That's why the tefillin are black. So the place where the tefillin rest indicates God's ultimate purpose, and his tefillin are the Jewish people. The hand tefillin, when we speak of Hashem's hand, we're speaking of his action in this world. God's hand is at work, guiding the force of history. And the ultimate goal of the historic process is the perfection, and that's the Messianic age. So the hand tefillin represents God's guiding the forces of the earth. And the hand tefillin indicates that Israel's destiny is uniquely bound or bonded to God. Okay. So basically, in shorter Aryeh Kaplan, God's tefillin represent the Jewish people. They're worn on his head and arm, representing Bnei Israel's unique relationship to God's purpose and actions in this world. Now, when we wear tefillin, it also represents our relationship with God. So, this is from the Zohar. It's written, and God created man in his image, in the image of God he created him. When a man wears tefillin, a voice proclaims to all the angels who watch over prayer, give honor to the image of the king, the man who is wearing tefillin. The Torah says of this man, God created man in his image. For this man is wearing the same tefillin as the master of the universe. So Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan asked the question, and some of you might be thinking, if this is all the symbolism, why do we need all this attention to detail? It's just the symbolism. And let's say it's not done exactly right. Why not just meditate or think about the tefillin? Why do we have to actually wear them? So this is the reason for all the detailed laws of the tefillin. It's because every detail of the tefillin that we wear has a counterpart to the tefillin on high. So that's something that Kabbalah explains. That it explains all the parallels between the tefillin that we wear and the tefillin on high. Okay, I didn't want to go into that chapter because it really needs to be studied, but that chapter very, very carefully needs to be studied to understand it. But he makes a parallel between the tefillin on high. Okay, so right, very good question. That question is outstanding. Hold on, let me address it. It says the Zohar, Hashem himself gave existence to the Sitra Achra, the evil, to exist in the world. We must therefore not take it lightly. Safeguard ourselves against evil so it does not denounce us. For this reason, hold on to your Zoom buttons here. For this reason, we give the side of evil, the Sitra Achra, a small place in our most holy realm. For all its power comes from the holy. This is the mystery of the hair of the calf inside the tefillin. The hair is allowed to show on the outside, but so short as to not cause defilement. We must bring this hair into our highest sanctuary and give it a place in order that it not denounce us. What the Zohar here is referring to is this: there's a little hair, if you look on your tefillin, that's poking out, little hair, goat's hair. And this hair represents evil. It's a much longer conversation. Why are we having evil inside the tefillin? It's a deep, deep mystical question. But on a basic level, is that evil is a necessity to exist in the world for the fact that without evil, there would be no good. So we need evil to exist. And also the drive that causes evil things, that drive can also lead us to good things. So there's a very, very, very small place for evil in our holiest realm in the tefillin. I mean, I gave this very short answer this chapter, but the point is that Aryeh Kaplan goes on for another 60 pages. And also, for those who are saying, what about for women? If you get this book by Aryeh Kaplan, he has a beautiful chapter that's next, which is outstanding, an incredible chapter called "What the Mystery of the Mikvah." Why a mikvah? And mikvah is a mitzvah for women. So that's the next chapter there, which I highly recommend it. But I will stop here for tonight. Anybody has any questions, as always,